What's up you guys, I'm Dan, this is Frugal Not Cheap. In last week's video we talked about asset allocation, how to think about our portfolio and what it's composed of. But what kinds of accounts the different assets are located in matters a great deal when it comes to taxes. That's the topic of today's video. Early in 2023 and in 2024, I made some videos talking about tax planning, basically making the point that it's not something we can do when we wake up on April 1st in order to get ready for our April 15th tax due date, tax filing due date. The tax planning needs to happen well in advance of the actual tax year. One of those choices that I make in tax planning ahead of the tax year that's coming up is what kind of accounts I'm going to be using to do my investing. In other words, what kind of tax status accounts am I going to be putting different assets in that calendar year as I do my investing. So there are three main types of investing accounts when it comes to their tax status. You've got taxable accounts. These are things like a regular brokerage or a savings account where we're putting in dollars that we are paying taxes on, and there's no special tax treatment. So we will have to pay capital gains and dividends and interest taxes as well if it's a savings account. Then we have tax deferred accounts where you put in pre-tax dollars. These are things like traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks, 403bs, and what have you. And these accounts, again, we're putting money in before taxes, so we're kind of able to get a tax deduction at the moment, but later on down the line, when we do withdraw, we are going to have to pay taxes at that time. That's why the tax is deferred. And then we also have tax exempt or Roth accounts. These are like a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, that's an option for many, and other types of accounts that are like that, where we're able to contribute dollars that have been taxed already. But not only is there no tax due on withdrawals, but there's no tax on any activity that goes on while the account is growing either. So that's kind of the beauty of these Roth accounts. For more on kind of the withdrawal strategies and a little more color on these different types of accounts, you can check out this video as well, which covers, again, tax-efficient withdrawal strategies. There are also even more tax-advantaged accounts here. We're thinking about the health savings account, which has a triple tax advantage because you're also able to contribute pre-tax dollars. In a sense, there's a deductibility for medical expenses. So it's a pretty powerful account if you have access to that. But in general, we've got these three different types of accounts, and how am I going to decide which asset classes I'm going to be putting in each of them? So first, as with everything on this channel, there's no simple answer. It's always going to depend a lot upon our circumstance, even our views about the future, and all kinds of other factors. But I think that it's very important for me anyway, that to think first about what kinds of accounts I want to be investing in, period. And then after that, decide what's the best place to put the different asset classes within those accounts once I've made that choice already, rather than thinking about tax efficiency of asset placement first and letting sort of the tail wag the dog on the investment account choice, right? So in other words, it's much more important for me to decide, okay, am I going to do Roth IRA or traditional IRA? And then once I've maxed those out, if I have, then am I going to do a brokerage account, or am I going to take part in my 401k? Maybe there's really high. All those decisions are the ones to make first. And then after that is the decision about asset placement. So if you're curious a little bit more about that, then I do have another video about sort of what I call the financial priority list. Also what Money Guy calls sort of the financial order of operations. You can check out their content, is good too. But I'll put a link in the description below to my video there. All right, so let's say we're in a position we're investing in all these different classes. So we've got maybe like a 401k at work, we've got a Roth IRA, and then we've also got a taxable brokerage account. How do we determine the optimal asset location for tax purposes? Well, of course, it depends on what sort of stage in life that we are in, whether or not this even makes a big impact or if it's a good idea or not. And in this video, we'll really focus more on the accumulation phase, because that means there's going to be a whole lot of time during which any taxable income that's coming in, will have a lot of tax consequences. And this could also in some ways limit our ability to invest and therefore also like our long-term growth. But the caveat here, of course, is that to some degree we might be deferring taxes in a way. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But safe to say, this is not just a clear-cut best strategy. It is something that a person needs to think about on their own, but I think it's helpful to get the idea of the framework and what the sort of common wisdom is on the topic. So as with everything with this channel, do your own research, make up your own mind, and then also might be a good idea to consult a fee-based ethical and hopefully a fiduciary professional, either in tax or in financial advice as well. But the basic idea here is that asset classes or investments do differ in terms of how tax efficient they are. And therefore, it might make sense during the accumulation phase to choose to place assets where we're going to be able to minimize the impact of the tax inefficiency of some assets. Bogleheads has a nice little spectrum here that we can look at. And we'll start with the ones at the bottom because these are actually the least tax efficient assets. In other words, they throw out the most sort of taxable events, taxable income within any given period. And so they're the ones that, we might want to focus on. Here we've got things like REITs, which are real estate investment trusts. And of course, the real estate ventures are generating a lot of income. And so that gets passed through the trust as well. And so we have a lot of taxable income generated there. Then we've also got high turnover, actively managed funds. And so basically here we're talking about, funds where they're coming in and out of positions a lot of the time, trying to maximize their gains. But anytime that they sell, of course, that's going to be a taxable event that can create capital gains as well. And then that also becomes, a taxable event for the fund holder, us, and another consideration, so another tax inefficient asset. And then we also have high yield corporate bonds. So corporate bonds would not be subject to any kind of tax exemption. And because these are high yield, then they're also generating large amounts of income. So all else equal, these ones that are creating these large tax consequences might be the ones to place into tax advantaged accounts first, kind of be the major focus. After having done that, then we've got sort of moderately tax inefficient ones where, we could gain some tax advantage, but it's maybe not as critical. This would include money market and bond funds that have more medium or moderate yields, and maybe actively managed stock funds that don't have as high turnover as the ones we were talking about before. And then finally, we have more tax-efficient assets at the top where it isn't quite as critical where we place them, which of course means that, we're more likely to put them in a taxable brokerage account because, again, we want to put the tax-inefficient stuff in some kind of a tax-sheltered account. Or a tax-advantaged account might be the better word. Anyway, here we have things like low yield, money market mutual funds, ETFs, of course, famously very tax-efficient as well. And also passive index funds. And if you're thinking, wow, these are kinds of the things that Dan likes to invest in, ETFs and passive index funds, then no surprise, they're also tax efficient. But then also, they follow my investment philosophy of not trying to beat the market, not trying to, find some five-star fund manager or anything like that, just, investing in the overall market through index funds. And then, of course, we have the ultimate sort of tax-efficient assets, and these would be things like tax-free municipal bonds. And there are also some funds, like Vanguard has them, that are tax-managed funds that are really trying to be tax-efficient as well. And so, of course, it would make the most sense to put those in a taxable brokerage account as well, just in order to get the whole benefit from what they're offering. Now, one more thing to add here, and this is a reason that personally I put most of my international equity holdings in a taxable brokerage account, is because you can get a credit on foreign tax paid, and I do get that every year. And so personally what I'll do is I'll try to put more of my international holdings in that taxable brokerage account, whereas I have more of my US holdings in my 401k or Roth IRA. Now again, this strategy isn't perfect. Maybe you've thought about it already, but one problem is that having these tax-efficient equity funds, passive index funds or ETFs in a taxable brokerage account, yes, they're very tax-efficient as we're growing in the accumulation phase, but then of course there are going to be taxes in the withdrawal phase in retirement, and so that's definitely a consideration to take into account. And of course that's going to have a lot to do with expectations on a person's marginal tax rate when they get there, how much growth they predict between now and then, what's going to happen with tax rates by then. So a very personal decision, but in my case I view it as definitely beneficial given my calculus. So I've put some links in the description below if you want to learn a little bit more, do a little more research. But I hope you found this kind of primer on tax-efficient asset location helpful. If I missed anything, do please let us know in the comments below. Hope you found today's video informative. If you did, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.